Hello, and welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Jeffrey Bruce, and I will be your host today. Let's meet our panelists. Bill Hirshman is an arts journalist and founder of FloridaTheaterOnStage.com. Michelle Solomon is also an arts journalist and the editor of MiamiArtZine.com. Kevin Black is a director and choreographer and the founder of the wonderful Kevin Black Productions. And our special guest today is someone who has been on the show many times before as a panelist, but this time we're putting her in the hot seat. And in all transparency, she happens to be my best friend. Shari Upbin, who is a producer, director, actress, and dancer. Or as Iris would say, dancer. I'm sure she has many more titles. Welcome, Shari.
Thank you.
Welcome. How does it feel?
The hot seat?
Yeah.
The hot seat. Yeah. Is it hot?
How does it feel? Good?
Yeah, feel great.
What do you consider yourself foremost?
Oh, that's
You
a
have
good
a lot of
question.
titles.
Yeah.
A lot of talents.
I think, it just sounds a little cliche-ish, but I love to direct. I consider myself a director, but I also consider myself a producer, and I also consider myself a choreographer, and I'm waiting for the right part to be an actress called on stage again. So the answer to that is everything.
But the producer title, your most successful show is one that I actually saw also called One More Time.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I think all of us probably saw it here, and it was a super show. And that was in New York, and that was your big one.
Yeah, that was, we found the show in New Orleans.
Right.
And my co-producers were Jerry Wexler, who was the head of Arista Records, and Art DeLugoff, who we all miss,
Village
who
Gate.
ran the Village Gate, yeah. And it was a time, Burnell, Ben Reese, and it was great. And it was a little tiny show, and it ran for almost 5 years. And it was my first producing show, and it ran for a long time, and I thought that's the way it was supposed to be.
I think people don't really know what a producer does.
Yeah.
Well, foremost in the theater, to get the title, it's you raise money, and then you become a producer. You need to do something to get the title. And I was asked to produce a certain amount of money, and I had a backers audition at my house, and everybody loved it, and it was easy.
But different producers have different amounts of input. David Merrick was, famous for having his fingers deeply into the creative process and into the rehearsals. Others are, they talk quietly to the director afterwards and go, maybe you want to do this. Do you have a particular style?
I was the others, talk quietly to the director, maybe you want to do this. I was always very artistic, and thank goodness people recognized it. So as a producer, I had a hand in the artistry.
What did your father think of it?
My dad? Oh, you brought my father up. Well, I was geared for show business when I was born. My dad was a writer for Jack Benny.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
And he was, and so I was going to be in theater, no matter boy or girl or whoever. And I was tap dancing on television when I was 3 years old. And then segued into...
You never fell off.
I never, no. You mean the TV?
Fabulous.
And I got my equity card when I was 13 years old. I was pushed into summer stock, and in those days we got equity by 2 years of being an apprentice.
Wow.
And that's and so I was building sets at 13 and ironing actresses' clothes, and I worked with the greatest. And then they gave me a part, which was good in Philadelphia Story. I was the little girl, and wasn't very good, but I learned by doing. That was my education, always by
Yeah, it's the best
working.
education, getting right into that. I have to say that I did do a little bit of reminiscing and went back and listened to the soundtrack for One More Time
Oh,
and
my
stuff.
goodness.
And I was like, this music is it's so great. And to me, it's so timeless. I have an affection for music from the 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was curious, have you thought about bringing it back? I think South Florida audiences might enjoy that sound, especially with that live band, which was amazing.
That's a great question, Kevin, because everything has a time and everything has a season. And we did bring it back to Broadway.
Yes.
and it didn't last. It was the time we were at the Village Gate when everybody sat at tables and was drinking, and you couldn't see behind these giant poles, and no one cared because they were so happy to get a ticket. And when we brought it to Broadway, it was stayed. And this was about the Toba Circuit, which has a theater owners booking association. And it was how it was in that day. And now it's a little bit, everything has to be a little bit more politically correct. But if we just brought back the music, oh, your toes would be
It was so
tapping.
great. It
One
was
thing
so great.
that I've really come to know you through is a lot of the Jewish plays that you really have become very, I think, passionate about, and so many. And there was one that, are you really trying to get that one out that you were producing? It was, oh, I had it, In the Voice of Our Mothers. You were going to take that on the road or do something with that?
Yeah, well, the gal who wrote it would love for us to do that. But as far as the Jewish shows, Jewish themed shows is concerned, there is another part of me that is also from my parents. My mother went to the Jewish Theological Seminary. My daughter is a rabbi, which is kind of nice for women, and I had encouraged that. So I've always had a Jewish feeling and a feminist feeling, and like to put on shows that have a message. So we go from Dixieland music to deep shows that are very specific.
Well, let's take a look, because we have a video clip from a past production of yours
Okay.
that we can show on television. Let's take a look, and then we'll have more to talk about.
Don't worry, Fedda, no one can get in. Okay, you fool! You can't lock us in here. What are you, a guardian angel? Look at Hedva. You forced her out of our house, and what do you have to offer her? To come stay with you here in the Mikvah? If I've done one thing right, it's been to take Hedva out of her home. And you're right, at the moment I have nothing to offer but the truth. Okay, see that, Hedva? She's got nothing to offer you. You need to go home. No! Okay, Hedva, oh, don't you Hedva me. You knew. All along, you knew I didn't fall. And you too, Hindi. And what about you, Esty? Everybody knew. Everyone with their whispered. But only in front of me did you play this stupid game. I'm the guilty one. Because I made up the game. Because I wanted to protect him, his good name, our family's good name. But you're doing very well, Hedva. You're doing well. Oh, I did very well. I never dared to make one wrong move. You know, I used to think it was my fault that he beat me. That I deserved it. Now I know it has nothing to do with what I do, with what I think.
Wow.
Well, there's a Neil Simon play I haven't been in.
Well,
Well, control myself, I'm laughing.
It's about a woman who's being beaten at home. And here we go from the musicals to this.
This wasn't a musical?
No, but it would be a
What
great
was the name
musical.
of it?
The name of the show is Mikvah.
And where did you do that?
At B'nai Torah Cultural Series. And it was written by Hada Galran, who is an Israeli author. And this particular play is playing right now all around the world, in the Czech Republic, in Poland, in Israel, and it was just in Toronto. And it's a very deep and about women's issues going into the mikvah, which are the ritual baths, and what we, very religious communities, what they say and what they don't say.
What do you find, having produced up east in New York and coming down here, have you found it easier or tougher to work down here as a producer? Especially venue-wise, which can be very, very challenging.
Yeah, I didn't know, I'm in Florida for about 13 years, and I thought it was going to be a lot easier. When I came, I did not know that there were so many theaters that had artistic directors, and they're kind of encompassed in one. And I had this incredible resume and worked for my whole life. And what I had to do ultimately was produce my own shows.
Yeah, speaking of which, and
get
earlier
work.
this year, you did produce something at the Willow Theater, correct? You did, was it the Hollywood Live show? or Broadway?
It
To
was-
Life.
To Life.
Yeah, at
Well, I was close.
no, you were very close because well, I believe in bringing keeping cabaret alive.
Yes.
And I do these shows called Hollywood Live and Broadway Live, and it's a formula. And my friend Jeffrey very often is the narrator telling us stories, and it works because we always like a little backstage gossip. And I also found that cabaret is a little bit of a dying art here. So in answer to your question, what happened was for me to work in Florida as a director, I needed to produce my own
Right.
shows.
Right. Same.
Is that what happened to you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I found that, you know, just like you, there were many theaters down here, but they all had their own team. So and I agree with you with the cabaret and the slightly musical review side of things. That I think it's a very important art form to keep alive. It's very entertaining, and I do think that, you know, audience members, especially in South Florida, enjoy that. So I hope that you can propel that forward down here.
How do you reach that audience? Theaters that have artistic directors, they have marketing infrastructures, if not an entire staff. How do you reach people when you independently produce a show in a venue that it may not have been in before, or people are not familiar with? How do you get the word
I'm on the
out?
phone a lot. I knew Andrew Cato from New York, and he was very kind to say, if you want to produce a show here, you're certainly welcome. But what happened was I contacted Jan McArt, and she gets it right away because she does love cabaret, and she said, whatever you want to do. So I was able to do Hollywood Live at the Wald Theater. So it was
Lynn
just
University.
yeah,
Right.
at Lynn University. So it's just a matter of I had to use my producing head and think, how can I make an inroad? How can anyone make an inroad as a director in a place that has all these wonderful theaters with their own artistic directors? It's difficult to do.
I mean, we find there are theaters small theaters that are starting out that go from venue to venue to venue. And one of the problems that they have is there are people finding them and keeping people aware, oh, this year we're in this venue, and next year we're moving to this one. And it seems like it's hard these days when you're a more independent operation to let people know you're there.
This is where Facebook comes in.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of things in the news about Facebook taking over our lives and being invasive. I found it to be very, very helpful. Hire a PR person, and you make cards, and you hand out flyers, and you're constantly talking about it, and you put it on Facebook, inundated on Facebook, and so many of us are, and they go, oh, this is where it is, with a telephone number or a website. And it's just being, Kevin, as you know, it's being as creative as you possibly can.
Yeah, marketing is everything. Thank goodness Facebook is free.
It's
For the most
free.
part.
That's true.
For the most part. Well, I'm curious about your dance background, because that's
Oh,
actually
my
news to
goodness.
me. So I wasn't
really?
aware of that. So tell us a little bit about how you got started and what you did professionally with
Oh,
that career.
I was 3. I was a professional tap dancer. Can you
That's
imagine?
amazing.
At 3 years
No.
old. My parents were Mama Rose, both of them. And so we used to go. The venue was the Catskills, when you just went and I had arrangements, and costumes.
This is amazing.
And from the age of 3 to I don't even know how long. Actually, I choreographed a tap routine last week.
You
Someone
did?
called me and said, "Are you
That's
still
amazing.
tap dancing?" And I really haven't been, but I said, "Yes, of course." She said, I want to audition for a Broadway show and do it on tape." And so I was somewhere, maybe it was a doctor's office, and while I was waiting for the doctor, I was just choreographing the routine, and we never stopped.
That's great.
Well,
Joey.
on that note, and your dancing feet, we have another video clip from a past Shari Upbin production. Let's take a look.
I'm not giving up my children. I would never give up my children. I'm going to think about what to do next, and I'll be back. Oh, Jimmy and Shmuel and books for the older boys. I, Hannah Cashman, accept upon myself a sacred oath before God to speak only the truth, all of it. And further, I, Hannah Cashman, take an oath before God to accept upon myself your verdict. It is not a game. It's my life. If I am risking everything by binding myself with a sacred oath, you must do the same.
With my own hands, I will strangle him. Hannah, what have we done to you? Fruma, what have we done to our daughters? I want to take my oath now.
That wasn't about tap dancing.
No, but you know what? It's a good segue into, tell us what that was, by the way.
That was called Women's Minion. And a minion is 10 men, and women don't have minions. And this was a case of a woman being thrown out of her community because of perceived injustices that they thought that she did, crimes that she was accused of. It's a true story. And they threw her out and took her 12 children away from her. And her family got together to decide whether she should come back or not. And it's actually the woman who was thrown out of the community is still alive. Wow. And there was a production of Women's Minion, and she came to speak about it. She never saw her children again.
So when did you decide that, you know, I mean, you loved being on the stage from this very young age, I suppose. When did it hit you that you wanted to do more of this behind the scenes? And what's the joy of seeing a show like we just saw that when it's finished and you've directed it?
Because as a performer and as an artist, I have, and my parents, I'm just thanking them, you know, enough today, gave me a little bit of a business head, a little bit of an artist, a tap dancer, a feminist, an advocate of Jewish stories, and Dixieland music. And so when the original question was, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's everything. I think it's going to be, you know, I'm going to live, you know, a long time, as my mom did. She was 100 years old when she passed, and still not enough time to do everything.
What do you want to do?
When I grow up?
No, what do you want to do? Being down here in South Florida now, especially comparing it to the kind of work we did up in New York, what do you think, what would really be, I don't know, bucket list, I hate that expression, but what do you think would be the greatest thing that you could bring to South Florida theater now?
An original show.
Musical? Or a ball of laughs like we just watched before?
It could be anything. It could be a musical. It doesn't have to be Jewish themed. I like to read plays.
We have witnesses. You said it doesn't have to be Jewish themed.
It doesn't have to be a Jewish theme. It
Queen
could
of
be
the Jews.
A play that would touch my heart, and I
Yes.
would like to. You really want to know? Produce it and direct it.
There you go.
And that's what I would love to do at a wonderful theater.
And Kevin Black choreography.
And Kevin Black could choreograph
Well, it's not a
it.
musical, it's a play, right?
If
We'll
it's
make
a play,
it a musical. We'll make
if it's
it
a
a
play. And
Medea
We'll choreograph
musical.
it.
now the question would be what theater?
Yeah.
That's a killer down here.
You know.
That's really hard.
And perhaps one of the theaters would say, we believe in this, and we'll do it, and we'll take a chance.
We'll take you on.
And that would be the most wonderful gift.
What are the best avenues to do that, though? Because, I mean, making a phone call and saying, well, can we possibly consider doing this? No, we're booked already. And people seem to be very insular when it comes to booking plays, and they're not really that open to booking an unknown entity or unknown quantity. And I know you've been banging your head against the wall
Keep
about this for a
trying.
long time. You just
You-
have to keep going, or
yeah.
open your own.
There you go. Open my own. But I just don't believe in no. I never did. I think that if we keep on going back to the drawing board and get perseverance is one of the most wonderful things that anybody can have. And you know what? It's a business. And just like as an actress, when we would audition and people would say, you know, no thank you, not to take it seriously. It's just, okay, and go on, because this business can kill you if you take it seriously. But now that I'm on the other side and I have to tell an actor, I'm sorry, I feel bad, and I go, nope, it's a business, and they'll be fine.
Sure they will.
Do you have any difficulty finding venues? I hear different independent people going, it's hard to find a certain size venue in the 3 counties.
Yeah, but it's the same with Broadway and off-Broadway. It's hard to find an off-Broadway house. When I was in New York, it all depends. There are some cute little theaters that if the cast has 2 or 3, and since I'm here, I have gotten to know every theater, every artistic director, everyone I hope is my friend. And I think if I found that play that I dream about, whether it be a musical or a straight play, that I would go to all of these people. And I don't know, I would call you, Bill, and say, Bill, is there a theater that I'm missing?
I get that call a lot, and I don't know what to say. There's a certain size theater that's less than 300 seats and more than 40 or 50, and I don't know. I get that call about once every 2 or 3 months.
Very few, though. Yeah.
That aren't already booked or don't have a resident company.
Right. Do you find that's the magic number, seat-wise, 300 or less in South Florida?
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
You just said the magic number, 300 or less. Yeah, well, $299 is good. I'll be working at the Willow, and I think that's what, about
150?
That's a good size.
Yeah,
150?
and I did a show last season, and it was a hit, and it became standing room, and now they brought it back, and because there weren't enough seats.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, because I know they've been trying to find an audience there, and I'm very happy that your show
You do a lot of
helped build
shows
that.
North, like in Boca and those kind of areas.
Is that north?
Well, north, like not
North of
south,
Miami.
not Miami.
Yes,
And you're not
yeah.
Miami based.
Exactly.
So I just wonder, if there's a different way of, it's a different audience. I see from my reviewing, it's a different audience that you draw. And is it seasonal, or are you drawing?
No, it's the same. It's the same. I found Florida to be, there's a season. They talk about there's a certain season. But now, and I know you're doing a show in July, in the summer. So
All summer.
maybe there's no season anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I've heard that
You know,
before.
it's interesting. We're going to go to closing, but since it's the 2 of us here, we have to do something very personal. Okay?
that?
Oh boy.
63 years ago, I met Iris Acker.
Oh my goodness.
And
He was 2.
so, no, no, but so did Shari, because we were members of
The Fresh Meadows Community Theater.
in Queens. And Iris directed me in a children's show when we were all there. And Shari was there. I didn't even realize this at the same time. And we had Estelle Gettelman,
Estelle
who became
Gettelman, who
Estelle
was Estelle
Getty.
Getty.
Yep.
Shirley Bernheim, who was in Teletheologist's Wife. Jackie Newman, whose son was my best friend, Scott Newman, whose father was a guy named Paul, who was in Sweet
Right.
Bird
Yeah.
of Youth. All from Fresh Meadows.
From
and Gene
Fresh
Barry.
Meadows.
Everybody
Wow.
Fresh Meadows. And you were there.
And I was there, and I was doing children's theater.
And Iris.
And there was Iris, and then we fast forward, and I was at a lunch,
It's a
and
great
we looked at
story.
each other
Great
like,
story.
where do we know each other from? And there, yes, dear Iris, and she had pictures. Iris kept everything, by the way. She has a whole history.
But we knew her when she was Yacker.
Oh, well. I
Well,
don't know
yeah.
what to
When
say
she
that.
changed her name, when she had a talk show, she said, I can't possibly call myself Iris Yacker. She was gorgeous.
And she
We
had a
miss
picture
her.
of me directing a show.
No kidding.
Yeah, over
At the community theater?
At the community
Wow.
theater, and we miss her. We
Oh
miss her
my,
so
we do.
very much.
Is there when you see other people's work down here, and is there anything you see as a producer director that sometimes you want to shake people by the shoulders and go, here's something I've learned that I wish you people would learn?
Good question.
Well, then I would be Bill Hirshman. Well, I always go, I think as theater people, we always go in with the best attitude. We root for it. You know, we hope it's good. If asked, I would tell them. Occasionally, I will see something like that. But I think Florida theater is great. I mean, look with Michael Mikvah, working in New York, and people are calling me, wow, what's going on in South Florida? And the shows that the American Sun. I mean, this is fabulous. I think we are moving to higher places.
I think one of the differences down here as opposed to New York is that down here, unless people are wonderful actors, everybody's really behind everybody. Other actors, if you get a part, you say, good for you, and you might be killing inside. Usually not, though, because usually they're good, and you don't mind losing a role to somebody like that. A very, very supportive group. I want to thank Shari, I'm sure we'll be talking soon, for sharing her life with us today. I want to thank our wonderful panelists, Bill, Michelle, and Kevin, for volunteering for this program. And I want to thank all of you for watching. Spotlight on the Arts is a community program, so if you have any suggestions, we would love to hear them. You can email us at spotlightonthearts@browardschools.com, and please check our favorite websites to see what's going on all over South Florida. Now, those websites are floridatheateronstage.com and miamiartzine.com. Thank you for watching, and make sure you tune in next week. And as always, as our beloved Iris would always say, make sure you go to the theater.